They say third time's the charm, so here I am. I'm having some issues with sound. Hopefully, this sound records just fine. I wanted to talk to you today about what terrorism is because I don't think we fully grasp how people who are melanin deficient, who are pale like me, have this pattern of behavior that I believe we sometimes unconsciously, but sometimes very deliberately create terror among people of color, especially if you happen to be a very Black person of color. And I think we're all sort of feeling the impact of that over the course of the summer. We had and now the trial that's happening with Derek Chauvin. And now, of course, just this week, this horrific Duante being murdered in the street for no reason, driving down the street with his little family. I'm Melody Brooke. I'm a licensed professional counselor, marriage and family therapist. I'm an author. I'm a speaker. I am also a mom and an old hippie. And when I think about the things that are happening today, I remember being a young person when in Oklahoma City in the spring of 1967 when they were about to integrate the schools and the protests that were happening all over the city, and they were so the white people were so enraged that their child would actually have to sit in the same classroom with another child who happened to have different colored skin than theirs. And I was not only shocked and horrified to see them acting so badly, I was also confused because I didn't understand why they were so upset. It makes no sense to me. It made no sense to me then, and it makes no sense to me now. It's so unbelievable still to me today. So I was one of those people who, marched in the streets and protested and did sit-ins. And, I thought that we were a generation who was going to bring change, that we were actually going to make a difference in the world, in our country, so that all people could be treated equally. That's what I imagined the world would be like. Now that I'm an old person, that isn't what's happened. And every time it gets thrown in my face that that isn't what's happened, Ahmed Aubrey here in the Denver area, sweet little kid just walking down the street, murdered. George Floyd suffocated, and now Devontae Williams shot for what? For for being a Black person in America. And that is not the America that I believed we were fighting for. So I'm shocked and appalled. And I also am really deeply understanding that what that is terrorism. Because every time that happens to one single person, millions of people are terrorized. People who have more lush, dark skin than I do, they're terrorized. The other thing that I was thinking about this last week and tried to post last week, it didn't work, was about the Confederate flag, which I recognize now as a symbol of terrorism. I believe that simply flying that flag is an act of terrorism because everyone who sees that, who is a person of color, who's African American, who you the message is loud and clear that I want to own you. I think you should be owned and beaten and raped and treated like chattel and chained and whipped. That's what that flag says. And and if you don't think that, you're in denial of reality because that war was fought for one purpose, to allow the states across the country, to encourage states across the country to continue to enslave other human beings. That was the purpose of that war. And I know people are going to say, oh, no, it's about states' right. No, it was not about states' right. It was about one thing, it was about the right to own slaves, to buy and sell human beings. When you see that flag, it's saying, yeah, baby, let's own some Black people. That's what that flag means. And you can tell it infuriates me. It horrifies me, but I can't even imagine what it must be like to be a Black person and having to encounter that in your daily life, walking down the street, going to a Walmart, going to the grocery store, and seeing somebody proudly flying it off the back of their truck, or seeing it on a state capitol building, or when you're driving from one state to another, and there it is, happily flying from across the border, saying, "You are not welcome here." That's what that says to Black people. It says, "You are not welcome here. You're not welcome here to be free, that you only are welcome here if you are enslaved." And that is unbelievable to me. It is an act of terrorism. It's a hate crime in my book to fly one. Tell me I'm wrong. Argue with me about that. I want to hear your thoughts. But the truth is, when you fly that flag, you're saying you are a racist and you think that Black people should be slaves. That's what you say when you fly that flag. That's the only thing that you're saying when you're flying that flag. You're not saying you're a free American. You are saying you are a white supremacist, a racist. And you are deliberately inciting terrorism among millions of Americans when you do that. Now, if that is not your intent, okay, maybe you never thought of it that way. Okay, but stop being ignorant about it. Educate yourself and understand that when you fly that flag, you are deliberately terrifying other people, that you are a terrorist just as surely as anybody in ISIS. You are a terrorist too when you fly that flag. You are deliberately terrifying other people. And these behaviors that, due to qualified immunity, police officers are able to shoot people in the street. They are able to choke them to death. They are allowed to taser them to death. They are allowed to do what they please with people of color who are just minding their own business on a suspicion. And then you wonder why they react so fearfully, why they get so charged up when a police officer comes toward them, because they're terrified. I'm anxious when a police officer comes around. Sure, of course I am. They're an authority figure. They have a gun on their hip. It's going to cause me some anxiety, but it does not terrify me. And every time one of these things happens, millions of people or people of color terrified and put in their place. And that's not okay because that's not the nation that I was brought up to believe in. This has to change. We have to change qualified immunity. We have to stop people from flying those flags. We have to have the discussions with people who are and help them understand that's not okay. So I'm hoping that this did record this time. I did this a few minutes ago and it did not record. I try every Tuesday to record a live for my followers to follow my thoughts on things. And I'd certainly love to hear it if you have different thoughts about this, or if you agree with me, I'd love to hear about that too. But just give me your thoughts. And if you are a person of color, if you are a Black person and you have some thoughts on what I've had to say, that whether you agree or disagree, I'd love to hear more about that also. You can find out more about me at melliebrick.com and on YouTube, and you can find my book on Amazon. And thanks for hanging in there with me today. And I'll attempt again to be here next week at 4 o'clock on Tuesday, Central